Welcome to I Love My HBCU ? The podcast where we express our undeniable love for HBCUs, but where we are also not afraid to address a few tough questions. So, sit back, learn a little, love a lot, and rep your HBCU. It's another episode and always another reason to love your HBCU. I am joined today by Dejaden Readus, an amazing student from Jackson State University. Dejaden, how are you doing today?
I am doing absolutely amazing today. I'm so glad to be here with you all.
Same here. I'm glad. So I don't know. So we're very comfortable in our skin over here. So when Dejaden went to get his mug, myself and my producer were talking about, I don't know if you overheard us. We were talking about your voice and how calming your voice is. And so I hope whoever's tuning in, listen, typically I tell people that they must be watching. They must be listening to you today and not just watching. You've got a soothing Southern voice. You also have a very deep grown voice, and you just shared 2.5 seconds ago that you're only 20 years old.
Yes, I'll be 21 in April. Yes.
So am I the only person that gushes over your voice, or you've heard
Listen,
about your voice before?
I get it all the time. Listen, I actually want to get into is it voice acting? Listen, I would love to do it. I love to talk. So listen, my voice is very unique and I get that all the time. So listen, it's somebody here all day, every day.
Listen, I don't know how
Thank you.
voice acting works, but if we've got any audience members that are listening to the Jaden's voice and they're like, wait, hold on, please get in touch with him or get in touch with
Yes,
us and
please.
we'll make sure to get the information, because I think that's beautiful that when you put something out there in the universe, somebody might hear it and the trickle effect starts. To Jaden, so I found out recently that you are not like an originally traditional student at Jackson State University, which I absolutely love. We don't get a lot of transfers on the podcast. And you are a transfer student from a college that I actually am aware of. I pat myself on the back when I'm aware of all the HBCU names, but I want you to start with Hines Community College. Tell us about Hines Community College. Tell us why it was your first stop before heading to Jackson State University. Tell us where it is for those who don't know or have never heard of Hines Community College.
Okay. So for me, at the time I graduated high school in 2023, at that very point in time in my life, I was not ready to make that big dramatic leap to university like most or a good percentage of individuals would be. For me, I felt like I needed to have that slow, build into it effect, which of course, community for most people, for most individuals, community college offers that. And at the time, my father worked for the institution, so of course, you have that increment where you can go in, and of course it can be free. To a certain extent, it can be free for you to get that education. And at the time, I had me and one other of my siblings was in college as well, so I wanted to kind of help with the financial strain on my parents. And as you can imagine, if I wasn't ready for college, of course I was not applying for scholarships, I wasn't doing any of those things. And so community college for me at the time was the better decision. I have always had a love for Jackson State University, but I had to go first I had to kind of just crawl in there, if I could say. I had to crawl into there. And so that's where Hines Community College came for me. And I started there, and I think within the second month while being there, I got introduced into the Student Government Association. And so and then, of course, eventually I made my transition on to Jackson State University. But Hines Community College was me allowing myself the space to tread the water, to test it out first, and then, move on to bigger and better things.
As somebody who came from a community college, and I will be the first to say that I think that community colleges get a bad rap, and they
Mm,
shouldn't.
agree.
And the reason why I'm smiling when I say and they shouldn't is, in my experience, and anyone who wants to come for me can come for me, that's fine. I find that persons who actually go to community colleges first, many, not all, but many persons that I've come across who go to community colleges first, they are better students
Mm.
when they go to the 4 year traditional institutions. Now, of course, you are biased because you are coming from a community college to a 4 year institution, but how better prepared do you think going to a community college was for you as you made that transition?
Community college allowed me the opportunity to get my feet wet, like I said. You go into smaller spaces, smaller classes. You don't have all the big lavish buildings or um the multitude of schoolwork and things of that nature. Everything seemingly is more small and in increments. And I think for individuals like myself who needed that, it gives you a taste of what college looks like, especially in spaces where if you're not ready for a 4 year institution. I think in my studies I've seen where a lot of times, a lot of parents would just push their students to or their children to go to a 4 year institution. And for a lot of us, we are not ready for that. And I feel as though that is why community colleges are such a pivotal part of our communities, because they give us the opportunity to just simply get our feet wet, to simply just getting a small experiences on a smaller level. And then, of course, when you are prepared in those 2 years, 1 year, whatever it may look like for you, then you move on to your 4 year institutions or you go into the workforce, whatever you need to do in that case. But the stigma around community colleges, I do agree with you. It should not be in that way, because I feel as though community colleges are doing the same thing as universities. That we're preparing us for everyday life, for the workforce, for entrepreneurship, for engineering, whatever you may be going into. It prepares us just on a smaller level. And I would implore anybody, if you don't feel ready for a university, if you don't feel like you can get along with the big crowds, oftentimes in universities you go missed a lot of, out of which I guess you say 30 students, now you got to compete with possibly, 70, 100, however many are in your class, in certain areas. And so for those individuals who I feel or who feel like, they need a more small, intimate space, I think community colleges is always your best bet. And, we have to look past the stigma that is given. And community college for me was absolutely amazing. I enjoyed my time, but yes, I think the stigma around it should definitely be debunked. And it's a beautiful experience, especially for those who aren't ready for university and the big time, as most people would say.
What I would love to see, listening to you and then just looking at my own experience in academia to a degree, and I know some institutions, some 4 year colleges already have this. I think every single community college needs to serve as a pipeline to one, two, or three more of the 4 year colleges in their state. And I think that should be standard. I don't think it should be
Absolutely.
optional. I think it should be standard. That will allow for that stigma to be debunked, to use your word, but it also will go to the reality that not every single person is ready for what can be a very overwhelming experience in that first year at your 4 year college or
Right.
institution. Depending on where you're coming from, it could be a massive culture shock for
It
you. And
should.
I'm using culture broadly. I'm using culture to include environment and not just the traditional sense or the traditional definition of culture. So this is a pitch that Jaden and Tosin are making
Yes.
to the rest of the country that, in all fairness, most of our 4 year colleges, it behooves them to have a pipeline program with a lot of your community colleges nationwide. So, okay, I'm done with my pitch, but that's my pitch. I have found a
Absolutely.
lot of those students, those transfer students into 4 year colleges to be a whole lot more serious. I said
Yeah,
it.
I agree.
Okay.
I'm one of them.
It's like, I
I can
agree. You're
testify.
one of them. You're absolutely one of them. So, to Jaden, before I call you a community advocate. You're also an author. You're a speaker. You're going to tell us about your book in a second. But listen, we're a social impact organization. So I really want to have a conversation with you about community advocacy and what that looks like
Absolutely.
for you. But before we do that, I'm going to treat you with our amazing rapid fire segment. You're going
Okay.
to answer as many questions as you can I want you to be the first person that really does it in 67 seconds. And I'm not going
Okay.
to take up too much of your time. I want you to be the first. Nobody has done all the questions in 67 seconds. Jaden, are you ready for the challenge?
Okay. Let's get it.
Let's do it. Okay. Jaden, describe yourself in 3 words.
Courageous, strong, fearless.
Courageous, strong, fearless. You're at your college graduation. Who do you want as your commencement speaker?
Jasmine Crockett.
Jasmine Crockett. I love it. What's your unpopular opinion about HBCUs?
All we do is party.
All we do is party. Shout out your favorite professor. It could be from Hines College. It could be from Jackson State. Who's your favorite person or professor?
Dr. Larry Day.
What do they teach?
Finance.
Finance. So far, so good. Your college experience as a song. What song is it?
Memories by, I think it's by Maroon 5.
Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a student are you?
8.
8. I love the honesty. What's the best meal at your HBCU? Not the best meal you've had. What's your best meal? What's the best meal at your HBCU?
I would say the fried chicken. Fried chicken Wednesdays, always.
Fried Chicken Wednesdays. You did it in exactly 67 seconds. Like I literally just got the buzzer. You did it. Maybe
Beautiful.
that's what I should start telling people is challenging them to do it in 67 seconds. You did
Beautiful.
it in, I'm not kidding. You did it in exactly 67 seconds. I absolutely love it. Listen, you've already given us your college selection journey. You shared with us that you knew you weren't ready for a 4-year institution yet, so you decided to go from Hines to Jackson State University. But you also said earlier on that it was always going to be Jackson State University. Now, you are in the South. You've got
Yes, I am.
several of your HBCUs in Alabama. You've got more than Jackson State University as an HBCU in Jackson is in Mississippi, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes,
Okay,
it is.
woo, listen. My brain had to like do a quick like, wait, hold on, Tosin. In Mississippi, why was your first love always going to be Jackson State University? Really tell us how you chose Jackson above all else.
So originally, Jackson State University is a family-oriented institution, and which many of my family members went to. So of course, we grew up going to the football games, the tailgates, all those different types of things. I actually have my dad's sister, my aunt, her 2 daughters went to school there, and they were also a part of the Sonic Boom of the South. So for a lot of my younger childhood, I just saw myself going to the games, going to support my cousins and things of the nature, and just seeing how diehard they were about this institution. I said I got to experience it. And so as I got older, I saw just the national presence that this university had, and just how family oriented, how academic oriented this institution was. And they blaze trails. It is a very significant university, and I just wanted to be a part in the number. I just want to be a part of the history that was going on there. And so when I make a selection or decision about anywhere I decide to put myself, I always want to look at how can change be made, how can I be influential, how can I be impactful in these spaces. And for me, that's student leadership. And so at Jack State University, although many people could classify it as a very concrete, settled institution, I feel like in my position now, I'm coming in here to shift narratives, to change some things. And I feel like Jack State was a university full of opportunity for me, and it just always has been a love of mine. I guess going from family roots, but for me, I just saw an opportunity to make some change, and I was already wholeheartedly invested into it, and so that's what I'm working towards even now.
You said two things. Well, there are two things I want to bring up based on what you said. I heard you say shift narratives. And you said that even though some people might see Jackson State University as a very well-grounded and established institution, you still see yourself as somebody coming in to shift narratives. And before I get your opinion on what I'm about to say, I want to also add something else. So I follow Deion Sanders, the football coach at Colorado, I believe he is right now. But he was formerly head coach at Jackson State University, and he was one of the people that I appreciated a lot. The way he delivered his opinions about HBCUs based on his experience with one at the time, but it was love sandwiched in accountability. It wasn't blind love. It was, hey guys, we can do better at A, B, C, D, E, F. So when I now hear you say shift narratives, I'm curious what you mean by you see yourself as somebody there shifting narratives. So I'd love you to address what narratives you see yourself shifting at Jackson State. And then I also want us to have a conversation of reality, right? With regards to HBCUs, but through the lens or your lens of Jackson State University. What could we be doing as a community, as whatever, put an X there, to show the love in a way that isn't placating, that isn't blind, but that is actually holding us accountable to what the legacy of those institutions are?
Absolutely. For me, in this current season of my life, student leadership is the sum total of my experiences. And I'm always going to fight wholeheartedly for student leadership in any area and aspect that I go to. As I stated, I'm a former SGA president, and currently now am vying for a position on the Senate in Jackson, at the Student Government Association at Jackson State University. Right now, my theme for my campaign is shifting narratives. By the time this comes out, we have been through the campaign, and
Are
I
you
feel like
right?
absolutely, and I claim it. I claim it. I feel like where we are now, student leadership is not taken as seriously as it should, not only by the institution, but also by the students, and also by the student officials, the ones who are elected. I found an
Mm,
issue when I first came into Jackson State University. I had a whole lot of fear and just disarray in my heart as pertains to trying to run for an office at Jackson State University. I felt that the elections and things of that nature were more so popularity based rather than policy based. I always wanted to come into a space knowing that I was qualified off of my work ethic, not how many Instagram followers or
mm,
um, appearances I had, but more so by my work ethic and the policy that I put forward. And so, in this position that am running for now, I'm in a space trying to reshift the narrative to make student leadership more serious for the average student leader and also for the average student. We have to stop electing individuals based off of popularity. We need to start electing people off of policy. I feel like effective and influential student leaders go forth to be effective and influential community leaders. I feel as though active and engaged students go on to be active and engaged citizens. I feel like as though a lot of the problems that we are facing right now in our everyday community is because we do not have engaged and active citizens. And I feel as though student leadership during
mm,
college is the battleground and the foundation where you can lay all of these things, if and only if you have effective and influential student leadership. But I feel as though if the foundation at the top, or if the top of the structure is not as influential, impactful, and engaged as it should be, and taking things seriously, it's a trickle down effect. And so I wrote this presentation. Actually, today I finished it for our director of student leadership at Jackson State University, and I made a statement where I said, if the Student Government Association doesn't, I mean, if the university doesn't take the Student Government Association serious, and the Student Government Association doesn't take itself seriously, then the students will not take the Student
wow,
Government Association seriously. And you
wow.
have this trickle down effect where in reality nothing is getting done or nobody's taking anything seriously. And these individuals go on to graduate, and we're in positions like we are now in our current government. It's a lot of different things that go on. And I feel as though college student government association is where you lay the foundation for creating and building effective and influential and participatory citizens every day.
Did Jaden for president?
Listen. Hey, we'll see what God allows.
The Jaden for city council president, the Jaden for mayor, the Jaden for governor. I'm not saying that jokingly.
Yeah.
Um, you could not have summarized. So I was an SGA when I was in college some 75 million years ago, and it's been a minute.
Yeah.
Um, but our approach was so different to what I see now. Because
So
I
different.
need to assure you, it's not just Jackson State
It's not.
University. It is a lot of our, again, my academic knowledge base is HBCUs. So if somebody watches this and they're like, Tosin, it's all colleges, you could be right, but the colleges I'm aware of are HBCUs. And it's gotten to the point, Jaden, and you're gonna tell me whether or not this is similar at Jackson State University. When you mentioned popularity contest, to Jaden, it's so bad at some institutions that I'm aware of that they know that if they're running against a member of a Greek letter organization, mind you, that member of the Greek letter organization might not be a name you know, might not be a name you recognize. But the second they become part of that Greek letter organization, especially if it's one of the Divine Nines, the person running against them almost gives up because
Yeah.
they know that all the Greek letter organization members are going to come together to make sure that that person wins. And it no longer becomes about policy. It no longer becomes about community advocacy. It no longer becomes about student amplification of voices. But to your point, and this is where you are going to have to answer the question that I'm about to ask you because I don't have the answers. Why do the general populace, i.e., the audience, acquiesce? They agree to it. They vote that person in also based on that popularity. And then it doesn't really give a fight, it doesn't give the other person a fighting chance. I think that you are taking on a pretty big challenge here by approaching it the way you're approaching it, even though many of us will say that's the right way to approach it. You sound to me like somebody who claims your successes, which is beautiful. Let's say you weren't you. I want you to get out of the Jaden Readus's shoes for 2.5 seconds. How successful do you think somebody can be who doesn't go after the popularity vote in SGA and really tries to run their campaign just on policy? How successful do you really think they're going to be?
I don't think they will be in today's university policy politics. I don't think they will be very successful, and that is a major problem. To your point, Dr. Towson, that we as a community of university students have to get away from the narrative of
Yeah.
university politics. If I may put myself back in my shoes, when I
Please
first, to
do.
add on to my point, when I first got to Jackson State, my whole idea, as I said, I was a former Student Government Association president. So I had all these individuals coming to me, you should run when you get to Jackson State. You should run, you should run, you should run. And I put myself out there. I said, you know what? I'm going to run for um, president. And after I got there and I made the decision, I prayed and the whole thing. I made the decision. I went to talk to our director of student leadership, and unfortunately, there were some constitutional regulations that made me unqualified. But I made the effort to at least try to put my foot out there. And something he told me was that you could have ran a good campaign off of proven leadership. And that was gonna be my whole thing, proven leadership. I had done it at Hines Community College. I got the record, I got the experience. I can do this. But for most college students, that would not have appealed to them. We want the individuals in the Greek organizations. We want the individuals with the Instagram followers, the models, the with all in all the clubs and things of these natures. And for most people, and I'm only can speak from Jackson State University, for most individuals, these folks have proven to be ineffective leaders. And as a leader, my biggest fear was to be deemed an ineffective leader. And I think
Hmm.
for us, as a university, at Jackson State University, we have several issues going on from the top, from the president's office all the way down to the, I guess, SGA office, whatever. That a lot of them, I beg and ask the question: where is student government? Where is our president? Where is our vice president? Where are our senators? Where are these individuals? And I'm not saying that student government, holds the whole power to fix one individual problem or all the problems at Jackson State University. But when it comes to issues, it's more like we're just placeholders and figureheads rather than individuals who are out here advocating and doing what we need to do for our students, our constituency, which is the students. To your point, how things have shifted. I remember, well, I don't remember. I remember hearing the time where students marched, where students were suing, where they went to this legislator's office or the governor's office, and we said we need some change to happen. For us now, we only go to the state capitol for one time a year, and that's just so we can do a press conference and go home. I feel as though we need to get back to making sure that student leadership has the power and the effectiveness that it has always had. I don't know where along the way we lost it. It got to be too much of a parade or a imagery thing or just something, for people, visuals, with no proven work behind it. It just at a certain point, I feel as though somebody has to come along and say, oh, enough is enough. We need to get back to what we used to be. And I feel as though my work, while I only have one more year at Jackson State, but my work while there and even a little bit after I leave is going to be dedicated towards making sure that we are putting people in place. When I get this position, I'm going to draft legislation that's going to be put into our constitution to make sure that we have more severe regulations when it comes to electing individuals. You have to be serious. You need to come up with a legislative plan for how you're going to govern this organization and be effective in your position.
This is probably biased because again, I am much older than you. Not that much, but I'm older than you. I was like, much. I was like, really, Tosin? He's only 20. Anyway, I am older than you, and everything you're saying is music to my ears. I have become cynical of Student Government Association because I see the popularity contest. I've become cynical about the way some of our student regents are selected on different campuses because it begs the question, was this really the right person to be representative? Because that's really what SGA is a mini government. Student Government Association. So it is supposed to be its own regulatory board or body rather,
Right.
that is representative of student voice. And that's the voice that's supposed to shake the table, as they say. And oh Lord, not to be reductive, but you find so many student government associations having their main role as managing homecoming for their universities. And that to me is ridiculous. You said something earlier on that I hope, if nobody listens to anything else we've said on this recording today, they hear this. You gave a stepping stone. You said that if you take policy, legislation, governance seriously at the Student Government Association level, then the likelihood that you are going to find yourself in a pathway where you are doing that at your community associations, at your state associations, and on up is a whole lot higher. And then we won't find ourselves where we find ourselves now. You are the right person for me to ask the following questions of, or for us to have this conversation. Jaden, let's take 47 off the list. And by 47, I'm referring to the president of the United States. I just call him 47. It's a little
That's the best term. Yeah.
So let's take 47 out of the equation for a second. What's you're a young person who is serious about community advocacy, who is serious about citizenry, regardless of politics. What's your take about what's going on and the voice that young people like you should have with what's going on in our society? And by society, I am referring right now just to the United States of America. What's your take? Grade it for us. Give us, pontificate like you would if you were on CNN with Abby Phillips for a second. What's your take on what's going on in society? As you know, the United States of America has pretty much just started a war with Venezuela as well as with Iran. And I could list a whole lot of other things. I am not going to. What's your general take about what's going on in society?
I think from my perspective, we got a whole lot going on that is unnecessary. Wholeheartedly, I feel unnecessary. Trying to take 47 off the list, wholeheartedly unnecessary. But as students, as young people, the coming generation, as many people oftentimes quote us as, I give us a grade level of a C minus. And I say that because there are so many individuals like me who are out here trying to do the work, but you got some folks who are just in the way, certain people who don't want to go home. Then you got other people who don't never want to give a platform, or or much less listen to a young voice. Oftentimes we are looked at
Mm,
as, what do you all know? Y'all haven't done anything. Y'all haven't been here. Truth be told, there's a lot we can learn from older people. But if you never give us the opportunity to step into the room, to be at the table, to make things happen, how in the world are we ever supposed to learn? But I feel as though as students, as young people, we could be doing more. We have a whole lot of people going to concerts and living the outside life and doing all these other different types of things, but when it comes to policy and things that are affecting our everyday lives, we're obsolete. Jasmine Crockett, and I admit this my second time mentioning her, I'm very invested in her Senate candidacy in Texas. um, but she had a statement that she made the other day. She said somebody told her, a younger person told her, I don't do politics. And her response was, politics, well, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. And I feel like, and which is wholeheartedly true, there is not one essential part of our life that is not governed or has some type of cord or tie to politics.
to
And I
policy.
feel yeah, politics, policy, governance, government, anything of that nature. And I feel as though it's so much miseducation and misinformation that goes around governing or surrounding politics and things of that nature, that it just simply just is not interesting for my generation. And I'm still in the
Mm,
process trying to figure out how to make it interesting to my generation. Because honestly, if you aren't like me and just come out, with those, I guess, that idea or that desire to want to be effective and influential, it kind of just goes over your head. But we have to get people to realize that you are basically, if you're not participatory in the elections, if you're not participatory in the fight and things of that nature, you eventually will allow you the space for things to either repeat themselves, like Jim Crow, like slavery, those things. Preferably we don't ever go back that far, but it's a real honest conversation to have, that we have to be more effective, more influential, more participatory in making sure that we are cultivating and evolving and molding the life that we want, not only our future selves, but even our children and grandchildren to live. And that was the sum total of what the people were doing in the civil rights movement. They knew that they wanted a better life for their children. Dr. Martin Luther King famously quoted that he hoped that one day his four little children would not be judged by the color of their skin, by the contents of their character. And I feel as though that was the sum total of their drive, that we just wanted a better day, not only for us now, but also for our future children and grandchildren to live in. And we're living in the essence of their labor. I wrote something, I'm getting a little long with it, but I wrote something a little while ago about Black history. And I wrote it in a stance where our generation feel as though, a lot of us don't go out and vote, sadly, but we feel as though having the right to vote is a birthright, which is absolutely not true. Just 2 or 3 generations ago, for some of us, we didn't have that right. We had to guess at the jelly beans or the grandfather clock, those things. And we get away from the fact that we think that, especially with 47, that these things could be taken from us. But there are some real things that we are experiencing in today's time that are should be eye openers for our young people to be involved, because just like the right to vote, it all could be stripped away from us. But if it could be very close to being stripped away from us if we are not careful, making sure that we're doing what we need to do to be participatory in our everyday lives, not only as students, but simply as community leaders, as citizens of this country.
You again, did Jaden read us for mayor? Did Jaden read us for president? Did Jaden read us for whatever? Um, you said so much that I'm not going to take anything away from what you said. I was smiling at different moments, and my producer in my ear is like, oh my gosh, it's not a shameless plug, but you have pretty much given the mission statement for the summit that we have called Generation Next. You are
My
the
God.
next generation, quite literally, and you have in every word, not so many words, in every word you have given the mission statement. And the two things you said that I must hop on, and by all means cut me off whenever you feel like it and hop on it yourself. The amount of times I remind all of us, not just the young ones, all of us, that for those who think that they don't do politics, politics does you.
Every day.
Period. You used the word participatory. I counted the Jaden, and somebody else is going to count when this comes out and let me know if I'm right or wrong. In this segment alone, you used it 4 times. And I don't think you overused it. I think it is perfect to remind people that being in political office does not equate alone to participating in the process. And the process that the Jadens of the world are talking about is almost everything is regulated around you. As long as you live in a civilized, quote unquote, civilized society, rules and regulations dominate for you. So
Absolutely.
I agree with you, Jaden. I think the question is, how do we take the word politics off the table and get people to realize that whether you like it or not, you are still engaging in this process because it is affecting you one way or another. So wouldn't you be an active? Wouldn't you rather be an active engager as opposed to you always being on the receiving end of whatever the decisions are? And I don't know what the word will be that will be a little bit more palatable to people, because every time I know I bring the word politics, oh gosh, here we go again. No, it can't be an aversion to the word. It has got to be you aligning yourself with the things you care about. If you happen to be a member of the LGBTQIA community, policies are being written for and against you. If you happen to be a woman, which I am,
Yeah.
policies are being written for and against you. If you happen to be a member of a minority group,
True.
regardless of what racial identity you have, policies are being written. Policy, policy, policy. So I love that phrase. You may not be doing politics, but politics is doing you, because back to the Jaden's word, you've got to participate in one
Got
way
to.
or another. Everyone talks about voting as the low-hanging fruit for participation, to Jaden. Let's take voting. I'm not saying don't vote, people. I'm not saying don't vote. I'm saying that's the easy one. I'm sorry.
That
It should be a
is.
no-brainer that everybody should be voting now. So let's take voting off the table. As somebody like yourself who is a self-professed community activist, community advocate, what are the ways would you invite persons like yourself, or that's not true, we don't need to invite persons like yourself to get involved, you already are. What ways would you invite persons who are curious, your age group, who's curious about, well, where do I get my foot in? What would you advise?
I think I would admonish them to first start off by going to your local city council meeting, seeing how your local government functions first. people often say, just looking at election numbers, we always be big about going to vote when it comes to presidential elections. But what we don't realize is it's those local municipal government that really impact us first. And so I would
Absolutely.
tell them to go to your city council meeting, your board of aldermen meeting first, see how they function. Get a meeting with your mayor, your ward or city council person, and tell them your issues, concerns, and things of nature. But, develop a strategic and effective relationship with those officials. And then at that point, go up another level. Go to your state representative. Go to your supervisor of your county. I'm not where, depending on where the different people are living. Um,
All different
I know,
things,
like
different.
yeah, I know, like in Louisiana, they have like parishes. So however that works, go to different places, and speak with to your representatives. Go to your Congress people. Go to your local NAACP meetings. There are so many different type of nonprofit organizations in the different states that are have grassroots organizations and grassroots strategies, and making sure that the people in the communities are engaged and are active. And I would admonish them to go volunteer for a little while with these grassroots organizations. In the state of Mississippi, we have this organization called SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, and they do a whole lot of grassroots work. Go with them. Go to the NAACP, and if you're bold enough, go to the governor's office. Go to the governor's office. Ask for a meeting with the governor, or at least somebody on his staff, on his team. Oftentimes, Jasmine Crockett also made a point of this. The higher up they go, it seems that they get more and more out of touch, or I guess less accessible to people, which in a certain portion is true. But if you be
Mhm.
on them and hound on them long enough, somebody will come in and allow you that space. I just think we need to make the extra effort and going and
Yes.
being visual representation in these people's faces to let them know that we're just not a number. We're just not a tally. We're just not a vote. We are actual people who voted you into a certain space. And because we voted you in, my congressperson always makes the analogy that his constituents are his bosses. We all vote him in. And since we vote him in, he answers to us. Truth be told, he may not do everything we want him to do, or may not say everything we want him to say. But in all essence, he is voting and doing things in Congress on the behalf of us. And since he's doing that, he answers to us. And so I think if all members of Congress or just any elected official had that mentality, we'd be in a great space. But I just think for young people, we need to be better at making sure that we're being visual representation in these people's faces, making sure they see us not just as a vote, not just as a tally, not just as a point or anything of that nature, but as a visual person who has needs, concerns, and an opinion. And so when you make that representation be known, they things change. It wasn't until people started marching that we got different things going in the, things went all the way to the president's office, Lyndon B. Johnson and the individuals of that nature. It wasn't until they started marching in unified number. It wasn't until students started skipping classes at certain institutions or things of that nature, that that they were able to desegregate certain institutions and things of that nature. It wasn't until people got unified, showing a dignified body visual representation, that things started to happen. A lot of people, a lot of times they say write letters or call folks, those work. But when you show up at the office, something different happens. They actually get to see something different. So I just implore them to get involved in making sure that they do what they need to do by showing their visual representation to these people. And for a lot of them, it's open. You can go and talk to them. We oftentimes think, these elected officials, once they get elected, we got to go through certain loops and holes to get to them. For some of them, I can see that. But when it comes to your local government, go right on in that office.
So, to Jaden, when I asked you the question, you said you gave an admonishing instead, and I want to give my own admonishing, and it is to our elected officials, because you mentioned that the citizenry should show up, and especially the young ones, and they should volunteer, and you gave a laundry list of amazing entryways. I'm going to admonish that elected officials need to also listen. I'm going to
Absolutely.
admonish that they shouldn't always wait to be begged to show up. They should show up when it's not an election. They shouldn't always knock on the doors of our churches right around election time. I don't see you worshiping. None of them are at my church right now. But
Yeah.
I promise you, come November, I'm going to see quite a few of them at my church. That should not be the case. I should see
Right.
you anytime. And I don't see that happening. To your point, as you quoted Jasmine Crockett, the higher the title, the harder it is to get. If I'm your boss, shouldn't you come running? Not come running, but shouldn't you answer to me when I come knocking?
Yeah,
If that really is the analogy, which I totally agree with, then the reality is you should be getting a report card from me every couple of years or every four, however many interval it is. And so the fact that we've got some of these people in office for 30 years, for 40, like, come on.
absolutely.
You're telling me that you won the vote each and every time and we're really that satisfied? We've just become gullible, or we have just decided not to engage, and the list goes on. So you gave your admonishment, and that was an entryway for me to give my admonishment. Our elected officials need to also show up all year round. And it's okay if you show up with your proxy. We know you're just one person, but let's know who your proxies are. Let's know who your
Absolutely.
designated persons are, and have those persons show up on your behalf as well. And that's not always the case.
Right.
The Jaden, I didn't even get to talk about your book. Remember how I warned you that we'll start talking
Yes,
and time is just going to go real. Tell
I'm
me about
ready.
your book.
We can go. So, Prayer Time is the name of my book. It is a spiritual. People oftentimes ask me like, "What is it?" Or oftentimes people put a book with a genre. For me, it was me writing. It is to me a spiritual journal of me. I published it during my senior year of high school in
Wow.
2023. I was, I think, a 17-year-old senior at the time. I had started writing it when I was 15 years old. I had just lost my great grandmother, who was my best friend, and I began the skill of writing. And somewhere along the line, of course, the Lord began to move for me, and I was turning these writings more into more of a motivational thing for really for me, every day, because grief was hard for me. And then along with grief, you're going through COVID at the time, and then you're going through trying to matriculate back into society, trying to go through school. I was navigating through high school. At a certain point through heartbreak and the whole high school love thing, and then eventually get ready to matriculate on to trying to figure out what life looks like for me now, because I'm getting ready to graduate and go into college. And so it was so many different dips and turns for me in that book, but each and every last one of those pages, I think it's like 127 of them, speak to a different area of my life and my development, my evolution, my growth. And it's called Prayer Time. And it literally is a collage or a collection of my prayer notes from what I prayed on whatever day. That if you go and look at it, it has a specific date on on a page. And I shifted it in a way to where it could be motivational for a reader to read if they were going through the same thing, or happen to find themselves in the same position that I was in at that particular time in my life. And that book has catapulted me. Oh my gosh, that book has catapulted me into so many different spaces. That's why I can say I'm a community advocate. That's why I can say I'm a speaker. That's why I can say I'm a writer, is because that book, simply in my words, put me on the map for a whole lot of things. And so I'm grateful to God for giving me the ability to um, get the idea in my head to write, and the skill to write, but also to go forth and publish it. I published it all by myself. Well, I went through a publisher, but I paid the publisher all by myself. I was working at TJ Maxx at the time, and I saved up every check I got that week. Um, to make sure I published that writing. It was a few $1,000s, and I got it done. And yeah, listen, it was probably one of the biggest accomplishments of my younger life. And I got it done. I'm currently working on my next project, which will be called All Is Well. All Is Well is a motto of mine. Everywhere I go, it's
Oh,
chronicled off Second Kings. No matter the circumstance or situation of your life, all is well. There's always light at the end of the tunnel, if and only if you're courageous enough to keep pushing. And so I'm working on my next project, and writing has just been the sum total of my life. And it's an outlet for me to express myself. What I can't say orally, I can say with my pen. And so
mm,
it's been a beautiful thing for me. My book has shifted lives. The testimonies of that book, I had no idea it could be as impactful as it was, but it was absolutely amazing, and it still is for those who get it and read it now. And I'm just grateful to have been used in such a way to be able to bless the people in this community, in the world, like I have with my project. To God be the glory for it.
Where can we find it? For those who are interested in picking up a copy of Prayer Time by Jaden
Yes,
Readus, where can we find
yes.
it?
So the book is everywhere. The book is in Barnes and Noble's major spaces: Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Amazon. It's on Author House's website. Author House is my publisher. You can of course find it in on iBooks. It's in Kindle. Trying to think of some more. I like physical books, so I'm trying to think of some
It's
other spaces.
everywhere.
But
It is
it's in
everywhere.
several spaces. We have it in several
So
spaces,
just
and
spell the Jaden's name right. D'Jaydyn, read us. Read as if you're reading a book, us.
yes,
So if
yep.
you look him up, Prayer Time is everywhere. Jaden, end this episode for us in one word or short phrase. Why does Jaden Readus love HBCUs?
I love HBCUs because HBCUs allow me the space to be me. Um, if I could just do the one phrase, but I want to go on a little bit if I can. I
Go
feel as though
ahead.
HBCUs are the safe haven for Black people to be expressive, to allow us the space to be us without any limitations, restrictions, or guardrails. Never knocking anybody that goes to a PWI, but personally, I feel like HBCUs, and even for my children, I hope to one day send my and am going to send my children to an HBCU. HBCUs give us the space to be who we are without any limitations, guardrails, or restrictions. We can be as bold, as vibrant, as bright as we want to be without any type of limitation on that. And I feel as though it's a safe haven, and it has always been historically a safe haven for Black people to just simply exist without
Be.
any any restrictions, anything. And that's the beautiful part about it for me. And I'm just glad. I'm so thankful and blessed to be Black, but not only to be Black, but also to be a student at what I feel to be God's best and God's favorite HBCU, Jackson State University.
Everyone claims their HBCU is the best. That's okay. The Jaden Readers, it has been a delight having this conversation with you today. I hope enough students, whether you're at an HBCU, whether you're not at an HBCU, listen especially to your message about community advocacy and getting involved and participating in their processes, especially at the local level, even before you go higher. It is impossible that anyone is listening to your voice today and watching you on this podcast and not liking this podcast because of it. And I also hope that I've done my due diligence in encouraging all of our listeners, anyone stumbling upon us, to subscribe to I Love My HBCU ? Wherever you get your podcasts. Yours in HBCU love. See you next episode. And Jaden Readus, see you in the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to I Love My HBCU ? Let's keep the conversation going as we share our stories and encourage more practical support of HBCUs, whilst of course holding each other accountable. Don't forget to follow and subscribe for the latest episodes. Until next time, love and lift your HBCU.